Hi, this is Dave with Market Trading Concepts, recording this video on Saturday, July the 28th, closing out the week for Friday, July the 27th. So let's take a look at the stock indices again this week. We took a look at them last week. We'll start out with the Dow Futures on the daily chart time frame. So last week what we were looking at, we were right in and around this area here, and what we were looking at was a breakout of the top of this wedge. I did have a long bias in the market, and I explained the reasons why, because we had, and I'll recap that, we had put in a low, put in a higher low, we were putting in higher highs, technically a higher low, technically a higher high at this point. And what I was looking for then, in and around this area last week, as I mentioned, we broke the top of this wedge, and I was looking for the market to either hold in and around this area. Let me just draw this to make it a little bit more clear, and let me see if I can zoom into this area a little bit, just so it's a little bit more clear. So basically what I had mentioned is I was looking at this area here last week when we closed out the week, and I was looking for it to hold somewhere around in the top of this wedge area in here, or recognizing that we had a symmetry situation where the market was stair-stepping higher, but it was putting in, for example, a high here, a low here. I was measuring this distance here, a high here, a low here. Looking at that, you had a symmetry going on here between these pullbacks. So what I was looking at was either this area to hold, or for that symmetry to be projected from this area to this area. And as you can see here, I was more looking for this area to hold here, but I said it was possible that we could get a symmetry move back down into support, back into this 12,521 or into this level. And it's a little bit uncanny how the market respected that symmetry. This is something that I don't always look for, but it was just kind of screaming out to me this time, looking at these levels here, looking at these pullbacks, and it's pretty uncanny how it came right back down into this level. Probably sucked in a lot of shorts, thinking, okay, you know what, the market can't keep doing this. They're probably looking at this saying, hey, here's a potential head and shoulders here, and if it breaks this neckline, let's go short. So you probably had some people even front running that, getting short in and around here. I personally wasn't interested in the short side. I was looking in and around this area to be the kind of line in the sand and ultimately hold support. Okay, hold support here and then push back off. So basically that's what we had, and then we had a breakout of this high again and a breakout of the top of this wedge with a fairly strong close into the end of the day Friday. Now where we came in was right into some of these levels here. So anybody that has been watching my videos for the last couple of weeks and actually paying attention probably remembers me saying that I was looking for a retest of the highs. Well, we came into this area here. So the question now will be, are we going to really retest the highs or not, the intermediate highs? So let's take a look at this chart and zoom it out a little bit and see where these highs are coming in. So we're pretty darn close to that area, right up here around the 13,200 level. Let me just get the pen out here. 13,200. I think we had highs of, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm just going from memory here, 13,240-ish. I think was the actual highs. You get some, you get a little bit of weirdness going on with the price levels because this is a continuous contract in the futures, and the contract that was trading back here would have been one of the back months. Before contract rollover. So sometimes you get a resettling of the prices when the data gets rolled over with the software vendor. The prices change a little bit. I'm not quite sure why that happens, but it is something that that I've noticed over time, and I've talked to other traders about, and they've explained to me, but I am not really doing a great job of explaining it to you. So basically, you get a little bit of change in the ultimate values of the settlement prices with continuous contracts, and so that is something that happens. But anyways, the important thing that I'm looking at here is to see, are we going to retest these highs? Now, I don't know where the market's going to go, and nobody else really knows where the market's going to go. I have a bias on the market. Obviously, I'm not always right. I'm often wrong, just like everyone else, but I have been looking at this scenario to play out for a couple of reasons. The first reason is I think that governments and the market, I'll just use short terms here, have been looking at quantitative easing. So I think that quantitative easing has been on the table, and this move here on Friday, close to the end of the day, that precipitated that big move up, was as a result of, I believe it was Germany and, was it France? A couple of the European economic powerhouse countries coming out and saying that they were going to support the economy. They were going to support some of the banks. They were going to support, I believe it was Spain. Now, don't quote me on that. I know the stories are pretty fresh and they're in the headlines, but ultimately what that means, I might not have my facts right, but ultimately what that means is quantitative easing. And this is kind of what I've been expecting. I think the governments and I think the market has been expecting that. And I think that's why we didn't really get a follow through of these down moves back in and around this area here. I think that the market has just been undecided, chopping around kind of in this slightly bullish range. And now that the quantitative easing has been announced in Europe, which it essentially is, in my opinion, quantitative easing, now you're getting that upward move. The other reason that I think we're going to get a retest of these highs is just because this area here is a magnet. It's a magnet now. When you get levels like this that come into play where there's probably a lot of liquidity, you're going to get a move up just to test those areas. That's just kind of what the market does. It's looking for areas of liquidity. So the liquidity is at these highs, I believe. I believe there's probably a lot of stops up there. For people that are short the market, there's probably a lot of stops there. There was probably a lot of business transacted up there. So the market is just going to run up there and probably test this area and see what happens. Now, I don't know what's going to happen from there, but my guess is if we come up and test there, we're probably going to trigger some stops and get a bit of a blow-off, a bit of a blow-off move up there. And we won't necessarily break through that level, but we'll probably... I would hazard a guess to say come up to that level, maybe blow off a little bit, and then put in another higher low somewhere. Pull back, do one of these, pull back and put in a higher low, and then we'll have to see. We'll have to see if that higher low and if this trend line that gets established. I would actually be looking for. I'd be looking for that higher low to be put in somewhere around the trend line if it doesn't just take off. So what I'm really looking for going forward is, my opinion on the market hasn't changed. I'm still looking for a retest. Okay, I'm looking for a retest of these highs. And then what I'm looking for to see is if we're going to kind of blow through them a little bit and then ultimately pull back. Because the stock indices have a tendency to do that. They'll hit new highs and then they'll pull back. So that's kind of what I'm looking for to see. And then I'm looking to see if that higher low that comes into place at the pullback is going to be somewhere in and around this trend line support. And then what I'll be looking to see is if it does pull back into trend line support, is it going to hold that trend line support? And are we going to start trending higher into a new uptrend, or if we're going to fail that level? That's kind of what I'm looking for. I really, at this point in time, I think the easy move is done. I think the easy move is kind of done, and then we'll have to see what unfolds later into the close of next week. So that's all I have for the Dow Futures. I'm sure the other indices are the same, but let's have a look at them and see what the sister indices are doing, and just see if we're kind of in alignment with all of these things. Okay, here we have the S&P futures. You can see the S&P futures did sort of the same thing, the same structure. You have the same structure in place over here, with the stair stepping. Okay, you've got your higher lows, your higher highs in place, and you're basically doing the same thing. Now here you didn't actually violate this low. Here you held support. Now you're pushing off through the top of this wedge, set to test some of these levels up here. Okay, so I'm kind of looking at the same scenario in the S&P futures. So let's take a look at the Nasdaq futures. Okay, so I'm going to use the continuous symbol in TradeStation at NQ. Okay, so we have kind of the same situation happening here. Let me just extend this trend line right, and we have basically the same situation happening here. I'm looking for a retest of some of these levels here now that we're breaking out of here. This one was a little bit of a fake out, I think, because we broke slightly below this higher low, but we held that higher low. So this was a little bit tricky to trade, but you can see this this wedge pattern, this coiling, and now we have this this breakout. And I think the Nasdaq is basically doing what the S&P and the Dow futures are doing. So let's take a look at also the let's see here. Let's look at the DIA, an ETF that tracks the Dow futures. This basically looks the same to me. You can see the charts are a little bit gappy. Okay, the charts are a little bit gappy because they don't trade overnight, but they're basically tracking what the other indices are doing. If we look then at the let's see here. By the way, these are actual instruments that you can trade based on the futures contracts. These are actually probably a little bit more liquid and more popular. I just like to track the futures because I trade futures, and also because I find that the charting is a lot cleaner. So basically you have the same situation here. You can see, by eye, this kind of wedge pattern, this breakout of the wedge, these higher highs, higher lows in place. So you've got that going on for the SPY. Let's look at the QQQs. Basically the same situation, although you haven't broken above these swing highs here in the QQQs. They seem a little bit weaker, probably because you've got some of the major stocks in here. I'm going to hazard a guess that are probably a little bit weak. Yeah, you've got Apple here is a little bit weak. Broke below the 21 EMA, so that's probably why you're not really getting as much follow through with the Nasdaq, the QQQs, things that track the Nasdaq. So let's take a look at a couple of other things. Let's take a look at these markets from the Darvish squeeze perspective and see what that's telling us. Okay, let's start off with the Dow futures again, and you can see here we had a Darvish long fire off on the daily chart of the Dow, and you can see here a signal fired off here and a signal fired off there. Let's just expand it out and have a look at it, and you can see here this is this kind of automatic indicator is printing targets up here. You can see the market has been very choppy in here from this perspective. It's been very choppy, and you can see the signal fired there, printing targets potentially up here, and so that's kind of in alignment, saying the same thing. Let's take a look at the weekly chart. Let me expand out the weekly chart of the Dow futures, and what you can see here is a move back up to these highs on the weekly chart. But the thing that I find very interesting, now you have a bit of a divergence here in this trending indicator of mine, but what you can see happening is it looks like we're approaching these highs of this Darvas box, but now what you have happening is a Darvas squeeze is forming. Okay, you've got a Darvas squeeze forming, and it could potentially break out of this weekly Darvas box. So this is looking really interesting for a bigger move, potentially even beyond these highs at 13,240. So it'll be interesting to see what happens if this Darvas squeeze on the weekly chart forms as it's forming. If it fires off, you can see the MACD looks like it wants to roll higher. You've got blue Hakinashis on the weekly chart. These weekly signals are potentially multi-week signals. You can see when the last one fired off here, brought us all the way up to this point here. Now this is a weekly chart. We pulled back, and now we're coming back up to this level again. If we get another Darvas squeeze firing off here, this could be a potentially big move. So I'll be keeping a lookout of this, and this is kind of one of the ways that I look at in order to determine overall directional bias. Like for example here, when this one fired off, we had a 400-point pullback in the Dow, but I was still net bullish on the stock market. Indices, because simply for the reason that these are fairly powerful signals, and these are potentially multi-week moves. So a 1 week pullback does not a trend make, and on that basis, I'm looking at this as a potential heads up that we may be heading into a period of multi-week higher stock market prices. It doesn't mean it'll happen. I mean, signals fail, but everything is kind of looking good and coming together, except for this potential minor divergence. But everything is looking good for a potential retest of the highs, and then a potential new weekly Darvas squeeze long signal forming. So let's jump over to the S&P futures, and you have the same situation on the daily chart where you had a signal fire here with potential breaking out of this Darvas squeeze setup here, and you can see a potential target higher around 1431-ish potentially, which would bring us up to retest some of these highs if it follows through. Okay, and signals form and signals can fail. So if it follows through. Now let's take a look at the Nasdaq Futures again, and you can see here on the daily chart you have a potential breakout situation. So it actually hasn't fired yet on the daily chart, and it's interesting to note that none of the other weekly charts are setting up except for the transports. So let's just take a quick look at the Nasdaq futures. You would need to, you've got a Darvas squeeze forming here. You can see this indicator is very choppy. You're holding the zero line on the MACD. You've got a blue Hakinashi, and you've got a potential Darvas squeeze breakout on the Nasdaq futures on the daily chart time frame. So now the other interesting chart here, as I mentioned, is the transports. You have a potential breakout situation here on the weekly transports chart. So looking at this, you're in an elongated squeeze. This situation is a multi-week situation, but you're coming closer to above the midline of this Darvas box on the weekly chart. So we'll be keeping an eye on that in case the Dow Futures follow through here on their weekly chart. We'll be looking for confirmation in the transports, because I believe the transports at this point in time are the only other index that is setting up to confirm the Dow. So from a Dow theory perspective, you need the Dow and then you need the transports to confirm. From that perspective, it's looking good for some alignment, and we'll be watching that going forward. So I hope that helps. Remember, this is not trading advice to take any positions. This video is strictly for educational purposes. to share ideas with other traders and investors. That said, we have a meetup coming up tomorrow, Sunday, June the 29th at 11 a.m. Hope you all can make it. I'll link you over to that page there in case you're not aware of it and you're interested. You can register for it. It's only $10. We provide, some food and drinks. So the $10 is to cover, the out-of-pocket expenses for the event. It is a part educational, part networking event. Hope to see you all there, and I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Okay, so here is the Meetup page. And you can see here, it is scheduled for tomorrow, Sunday, July the 29th at 11 a.m. So far, we have about 8 people attending. It's a little bit slower than the usual meetups that we have at the end of each Sunday of each month. The last Sunday of each month, rather. I think a lot of people are on holidays. A lot of people contacted me to let me know they would be on holidays. So we're still going to go forward with this meetup. We're on technical analysis and chart reading, part 5. It should be a good event. We usually get a couple extra people showing up that haven't registered. It'd be great to see you all out there. I will link over to the actual write-up of the event. You can pause the video here and have a look at it. And if you're interested, feel free to link up to this link right here, meetup.com, Burlington-active-traders-investors. That will, this is the actual event link, but that will take you right over to our website, or our Meetup page rather, and then you can sign up for this event, and we look forward to seeing you all there. Have a fantastic weekend and hope to see you tomorrow. Good trading.